Welcome to the Professional Oasis podcast. I am your Oasis guide, Dr. Johnette Ruffner-Ceaser, founder of the Professional Oasis and Liberated Expressions, LLC. I am joined by my fellow Oasis guides, Candy Speight, owner of Order Your Steps, LLC, and Karen Bryant, founder of Bloom Theory Media. And we are so glad you're here. Today's episode is an extension of our previous conversations about missteps or mistakes. We have explored the power of personal missteps and how God uses even our mistakes to guide us, shape us, and move us forward. And we've discussed generational missteps. And these are the patterns, the behaviors, and unspoken struggles that get passed down from families that don't talk. The moments where silence becomes a teacher and every generation ends up learning the hard way. And today, we are going to have an honest and heartfelt conversation about romantic relationship missteps and what happens when anger goes unchecked and pain finds a voice. And to help us to unpack this, we have a special guest, Rhonda Stanford, who is the visionary and lead author of the Amazon bestseller book titled The 7 Deadly Sins That Can Ruin a Relationship. And let me tell you, it is not a bestseller for nothing. It is an extraordinary book. And what strikes me every time I read it is the level of boldness and transparency of the story shared by Rhonda and the other authors. And I just want to shout out and thank the other authors for blessing us with their experience, specifically Sabrina Goodman, Darwin Johnson, Reverend Dr. Angela Jones, April Morrow, Beverly Simon, and Olivia Stanford. So please, ma'am, please, sir, purchase the book. Use the QR code above to secure your copy today. And before we jump into the meat of the matter, I want to properly introduce Rhonda. Rhonda is a former executive in the telecommunications industry. She is a proud mom of 3 amazing children who she raised with her late husband, Timothy Leon Stanford. Rhonda has a heart for walking alongside people during some of life's hardest moments, and she's deeply rooted in her faith. She truly believes there's nothing too hard for God to handle, and that belief shows up in the way she serves, leads, and supports others every day. So let's give Rhonda a warm Rhonda, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
All right, thank you for that. So I'd first like to thank you, Dr. Johnette, for allowing me space on your podcast, for inviting me to come and share with you ladies. I feel honored. And thank you to Karen and Candy for sharing your space with me. So hopefully I can live up to your expectation.
Absolutely. So, Rhonda, we have a lot to discuss today. And so let us jump right in. And if you would, for those who have not read the book, would you give us an overview of the book and specifically your chapter titled Anger and how this all came about?
Okay. So, yes, the book is called The 7 Deadly Sins That Can Ruin a Relationship. So I like to describe it in a way where it's 7 people being very transparent, showing how one of the 7 deadly sins impacted them and how they went from the sin to deliverance with God's help. So we have I talk about anger, envy, gluttony, greed, lust, sloth, and pride. And so each author, again, they're very transparent. We all said the same thing. even though we said yes to the call, we all said we're pretty private people. We don't share, our lives like that with everybody, but we all felt that this is what God wanted us to do. So we leaned in and we did it. So my chapter is on anger. It is just telling the story of how I felt when I decided to get into a romantic relationship almost 20 years after my husband's passing. And when that relationship ended, where it left me, how it left me feeling, and then how God just came in and do what he does best. He set free, he delivered, he makes you whole. So it really was a passion project, but it did not come without some, I guess, some pushback from me, especially.
Thank you. I really appreciate that overview. Without giving too much, for those who haven't read the book, would you give us a synopsis of what happened?
Okay. So again, I was in a romantic relationship. Um, it was a relationship that started out beautiful. I mean, it was everything that I would want. And at a certain point, it started to change its form. It started to change from being this great relationship to a so-so relationship to a not so good relationship. And it just talks about how I felt when the person that I was in love with, and I believe he was in love with me, decided to break up with me. And it wasn't the first time that he had broken up with me. He would often break up with me if things didn't go his way, so to speak. So I would always let him back in. But the last time when he walked away, I actually walked away and closed the door. So, the story, the book tells about my encounter with Jesus as I dealt with feeling lost, feeling hopeless, and quite frankly, feeling ashamed. I think I felt ashamed because I was never the kind that slept around. So I did it differently this time. The way I grew up is you're married before you have sexual relations. And so this time I thought, I'm going to do it a little bit different. And I'm doing it different because mainly what I told myself is I'm of a certain age. I felt like I could do this. But one thing I tell people when I talk to people is I said, listen, I don't care how old you get, you still have to follow the Bible. You still have to follow God's will for your life. And so I had an encounter with God where, I had to sit in the shame and the despair with him. And he gave me instructions on how to get out of this despair. Now, previous to this, I followed Jesus, I talked to Jesus, I try to listen to Jesus. But when I was in this place, it was like a valley experience. And now I understand what people mean when they talk about the Bible. Excuse me, being, in a valley experience, I felt like I was so low. And I felt like I had hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And I just thank God Jesus was the rock at the bottom because he helped me to see my way through. So hopefully that answered your question.
That is perfect. And there's so many places I could dig my teeth into right here. And we'll get to those components later, I'm sure. But I think so many women can relate to your story. Loss, hopelessness, shame, despair, guilt. And the thing about it is you after 20 years decided, I'm going to try love again. And I'm going to do it differently. And with trying it again, it didn't work out as you had expected. And even though the relationship was lost, the relationship with God grew even stronger. Yes. And so that is the beauty of it, that God is always there. And even in what we call a misstep, those steps are still ordered as we talk about often in our conversations. But I want to dig a little bit into the anger piece. In the book, you say, my anger became my sin. Over time, my anger was fed as Richard did more things to hurt me. And each instance added fuel to the fire. Yet I stayed. Were you angrier with Richard or yourself for staying in the relationship?
That's a good question. I was angry at myself. I was angry at myself because, as you all know, we are only responsible for our actions. So I wasn't angry at him. I was holding myself accountable because I have free will. And I could have stopped the relationship. I could have left the relationship, but I didn't. And I didn't mainly because towards the beginning of our relationship, we shared some intimate details, and I made a promise to him that I was not going to leave him. And I stuck with that promise. But again, that last time he left me, I had to walk away. Because of what had been taken away from me. Yeah. And I had to recover. I had to recover from it and get clarity, from just I used to say, I felt like I was on a roller coaster with him, And at my age, it's like, you would think by this age, people know what they want. They're not playing games. And life is going to be kind of easy going. Well, I know that everybody has problems. I get that. But it wasn't as easy as I thought it should have been.
Right.
So again, I was holding on. I was holding on to the very end. Yeah. And, in fact, someone said to me, very close to me, they say, you were holding on like, on the Titanic when the band was playing, the sink was shipping. It was clear that they should have jumped, but they still played their instruments. So just mainly because I had made a promise to them and myself.
Yeah. Again, it as I hear you talk about this, and I think about what transpired based on what's in the book, my anger definitely would have become wrath. And, God is a keeper, and he definitely helps us to work through things. And at the same time, helping us to see ourselves. And it doesn't matter how old we are. There's always something to learn. Mm-hmm. So I want to present you with my final question before I invite Candy to chime in. So this is called the Professional Oasis Podcast. And talking about romantic relationship missteps may seem out of place as it relates to our professional life. But I believe missteps, perceived or real, are the things that keep professional women in bondage due to shame and guilt, despair, all of those things. And with that said, many high functioning women perform well externally while unraveling internally. How did anger from this situation begin to interfere with your sense of professional peace, clarity, confidence, self trust at work, or maybe just as a leader, be it at work, as a mother, in church, or community? How did that impact you, or did it impact you?
Yeah. So I have always been one who knows how to compartmentalize things, right? So I do understand that God is my source. I get that. And I also understand because I work. So I also understand that they pay me to do a job. So I was able to go to work, be engaged, not share what I was going through, um, and get my job done, um, and get through life, so to speak. But what would happen is when I would, it's after that, that I would have to deal with things. And so two things I want to make clear. So the first thing is I don't want to paint Richard, as I call him. Of course, one of our authors said we're using uh, other names. We're not using the real names to protect the guilty. So, I'm still in Darwin's line there. But one thing I could say between Richard and I is we weren't like arguing at each other. We weren't screaming and all of that. So the anger for me manifested in a way where I suppressed it. Um, so it did not interfere, even at church, people didn't know what I was going through. Not that I was hiding it. It's just that I have learned through life that this is part of my life. This is part of my life. This is part of my life. I don't have to share and you know uh, cry on somebody's shoulder because I'm going through something in my personal life. I remember when I worked in a previous job, not the job I'm in now. There was a woman who would come and she'd cry on your shoulder. I mean, she told all her business, and I would just be like, you want to be sympathetic, but after a while, it's like I can't take it anymore. So I always say I never want to be that person. So yeah, I was able to again keep things in their place. So it did not affect me professionally
Mm.
at
Yeah.
all. At home, um, and this is another thing I always when I look back at this, I say, Jesus, you are really awesome because I had moved out of the house where my children lived, so a lot of things they didn't have to see.
Mm.
They didn't have to experience. Towards the end, they saw, they knew what was going on. But for the most part, I could shield that even from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Rhonda. And I know that so many women, I think women uh, have this superpower to be able to, even in that we're walking through the fire,
Mhm.
being able to still move forward and function. However, I do am an advocate of the tears when needed, the screams when needed, but when we need to show up, we know how to show up. And so that is definitely, I believe, a divine strength that we possess. So thank you so much for sharing, and I yield the floor to Candy.
Okay.
Well, Rhonda, the story was so enlightening. I could actually definitely relate. I can definitely say I could relate to a relationship that did not end as I would have liked, but it was interesting. And as you walked us through your journey, but the book also says that anger left unchecked doesn't just burn; it binds.
Yes.
That was
What
powerful.
what did that mean as you expressed that?
Okay, so it was several levels to that. So on one level, what I meant is that we were going through issues, and what I had learned to do was just, again, suppress it, not really talk about it. Because when I did talk about it, it was as if I had three heads when I'm talking. It, he would be like, "Why? Why would you think like that? I don't think like that." And and so it got to the point where I just didn't really share a lot. But the hurt, and I think the hurt for both of us, and I'll call it anger, but the hurt for both of us, um, while it burned, while it hurt, while it even pierced our hearts at times, it also binded us together. It was almost as if we couldn't break a loose. It was
Wow.
almost like there was truly a stronghold. Um, and so that's what I meant when I said that not only it hurt us, but it seemed to have put us together. And on another level, it kept us together because we both would say, we've done so much together. We've gone through so much together. We can't let this go. We just got to make it work. And at certain points, I think we both tried to make it work.
That's interesting. That's interesting. When you a couple of things that comes to mind as well is that anger is usually rooted in hurt. It's usually starts as hurt, and then when it hurts so much, it becomes anger. Um, I'm curious though, as in terms of one, you said in the beginning that you already you had committed. I'm assuming he had also that you wouldn't leave each other. Was that, and as even as things became more painful, you still were committed to not leaving. What did that feel like? Like you said, I know you said the hurt became anger and it just kind of binds you there, but the fact that it's like we're going to stay in it. Um,
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I'll tell you from my point of view, the way I felt is that he was in a contract with me, meaning as long as I did what he wanted, how he wanted, when he wanted, then we were fine and he was not going anywhere. But the moment things didn't go according to his plan, he would exit the relationship. And as I said before, he had left our relationship several times before, but he would always come back. Um, but I would be hurt in those times when he would leave.
mhm.
Um, and sometimes it would be not enough for somebody to leave. I used to sometimes say he's taking a break. Like it's kind of like I knew in my mind, don't know what he was doing during the break, but it was almost as if he would say he had a lot of hypotheticals. You know, what if this happened? What would you do? So
Yeah.
it would get to the point I'd be like, "Are you serious?" And he's like, "That's it. I'm I'm out of here. And he's gone. So I would see him at what he had with me was definitely a contract. Now, I'm not saying what I had with him was right, but I feel like what I had with him was a covenant.
Oh.
And I think covenants to me, and I really believe this, but I'm being honest, I was in a covenant, but to me, covenants are supposed to be saved for husband and wives. That's really what I believe. But honestly, I believe I was in a covenant with him. And no matter what happened, no matter how he talked down to me or what he said to me, I was in that covenant and I was not going anywhere. And I had gotten to the point where I would say to him, talk to me like you talk to your sisters. I'm not asking for anything else, but respect me and talk to me like you talk to your daughter, because I know you can do it. I know you can. I've witnessed it. But yet, at a certain point, when it came to me, it was a lot of disrespect. And again, I still stayed. And that's why I really believe I was in a covenant with him.
That's interesting. So with that and the ups and downs and leaving and coming back, how did your conversations with God change? Or were there conversations with God? Let's put it that way.
Yes, there were conversations with God. And my conversations with God would be more like, God, give me a sign if this is not where I should be. And he would give me a sign. I kid you not, he would give me a sign. And I'd be like, no. And it's almost, I would then say, Lord, just if you give me a sign, and I know it's a sign from you, I know that I'll leave, and God, I mean, the things that came through this relationship where it didn't make it to the book, because, I don't like, I don't want to share everything that happened in the book because there are other people involved. And so, but yeah, God would give me signs. It would be like right in my face. And I would say, well, maybe no. And then it was really just me not ready to let go, to not end something that I should have ended months and months before we did. But yeah, we even prayed together to God about our relationship. But I think you have to be ready. You have to be in a mindset where you can accept what God is saying to you. And I didn't get to that until the very end, where it's like, okay, God, I think you've shown me enough signs. You've spoken to me enough, and I'm at a point now where I can't ignore. I just can't ignore it anymore.
That's interesting when you look at the depth of the Holy Spirit in our lives, in his attempt to lead and guide us when he knows that we're going in a not so pleasant direction, and he's trying to direct us in it, and we hear him, but we're not really listening. Hearing and listening is two different things, and so we hear him, but we're really not listening. And when you also refer to the stronghold, which for me, I always thought it was like the enemy holding you into something, when in essence it's you holding on to something that is not right. But you're so embedded in that belief that it's going to work. And I think that's what keeps us staying in something, convincing ourselves that it's going to work. Did you find yourself in that place that no matter, I think you said it, no matter what, this is going to work, even though the Holy Spirit was saying, no, I don't think so.
Well, you're right about that. And I think that I wanted it so badly. I wanted it to work. Um, I I I liked spending time with him. Um, and I really did want it to work, but when I talk about strongholds and I talk about different things, I just thought of this. When we were um, when we were together, he would always say he's going to marry me, and he knew that's something that I wanted. In the beginning, I did not want to ever get married again, but once I fell in love with him, that's what I wanted. So he would say, um, we're going to get married. And then he'd say, we're going to make this big announcement on Thanksgiving. And so I'm like, okay, because, in my mind, I don't want to say like, what is it? Like, because if he's going to propose, I don't want to blow it. So Thanksgiving came and I said, well, what's the big announcement we're going to make? And he says, we're going to let them know that we're going to buy a house together. And I was like, oh, okay. And I kind of like, that's what he said, but I know what's going to really go down. Well, it didn't happen. It did not happen. He didn't propose to me. And then it was Christmas time. He and my younger sister, they would joke around and he would say, we're going to have a Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, right? Like getting married.
Oh my gosh.
So okay, I'm thinking it's going to happen Christmas. Well, it didn't happen Christmas. And then around Valentine's Day, we were at my sister's house, and he was like, when we get married, where do you want to get married? And I said, well, at my sister's house, And he said, yeah, I can see you coming down the stair, So it was like we were all into it. So I'm thinking Valentine's Day is going to be it. Didn't happen. And then my birthday. It didn't happen. So at that point, I'm like, listen,
Wow.
stop playing with me. Where I don't think, now that I look back, I don't think he had any intentions to marry me, but he would talk about it. We would talk about it, and it seemed like it would happen. So that's what I mean when you talk about this bond that you have with someone, and you're talking about the things that you think both of you really, really want, and you find out that maybe somebody's playing with your feelings kind of thing. Mm-hmm. They're not keeping their word. They just say what you want to hear. And so that also goes along with some of the signs. I think God was, he was putting it in my face and I was not going for it,
So at what point, what was your turning point? Because obviously you saying the Holy Spirit all along was trying to kind of let you know that he was giving you the signs, and you were getting angrier and angrier as time went by. What was your turning point?
My turning point was when the disrespect had gotten to the point where it would come out no matter where we were. And it's one thing when you're getting disrespected in private, but it's another feeling when you're getting disrespected in public. Mm-hmm. And I would say, no, I don't feel that way, or I would say, that's your way of thinking. It's not my way of thinking. Or, I would say, I would try to say empowering things so he knew this ship is changing course a little bit. It didn't abruptly change course, but I started talking more matter of factly with him than hmm, just let that go. I'll let that go. I'll let that go. I started kind of standing up for myself. And so, yeah. Mhm.
Well, I don't want to monopolize your time, but I want to ask one more thing. Did you feel when you reached your turning point that the Holy Spirit's voice became louder so that you were given the strength that you needed, or were you kind of trying to operate on like your own on your in your own strength until you got to a certain point where the Holy Spirit could take over because you were still maybe somewhat um, fearful or ashamed at what you had already, that what had transpired, and now you were at a point where, okay, did you really kind of embrace his guidance at that point?
Yeah. So I think now that I look back, I think that the Holy Spirit was tugging and pulling at me. I think that I wasn't receptive. I think I was walking in my own way um, until it got to a point where there was no denying things. It was like, okay, now you're not stupid, so don't act stupid. It was like, yeah, I think in the beginning, and we were together for about a year and a half. So at a certain point, it got to the to a point where I had to kind of surrender. I had to
Mm-hmm.
because it was affecting me, not what I was doing, not like my work or anything like that. None of that was affected, but it was affecting me on the inside. And I knew something had to change. Something had to happen.
Understood. Understood. Well, I'll defer to my fellow Oasis guide to.
Yes, yes. Miss Rhonda, first of all, I really want to congratulate you for taking that leap and opening yourself back up for love after, 20 plus years of, focusing on raising your family as, after the death of your husband. And I know that took a lot to do. And so you should feel good about yourself and your ability to do that. So I want to congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
Um, and I want to thank you for your vulnerability. What you've written in your book um, is a tale. I don't want to say a tale as old as time, but I
Mhm.
will say that every element of your story, I believe every woman can resonate with those elements, whether those elements fell together in the same order or a different order.
Mhm.
You're telling women's story, you know, and so I want to thank you for that vulnerability. Um, in the work that I do, I talk a lot about community and connection, and put people in remembrance of, the fact that we're creative beings and God has placed us here on this planet for his glory, and we each have specific purposes to fulfill in ourselves and also in the way that we impact the larger community around us, and so I think about that when as I'm listening to your story, and having read your story, and hearing you position yourself, in the body of Christ. And this is how, you've been able to come to terms with what your experience is, and to help you move forward from that. And I'm thinking about one part in your book. It won't leave me alone.
Mhm.
And I just thought I'd read that part. And I can't remember if it was Johnette or Candy who asked about, I think it might have been Johnette, did what was happening with you in this relationship, especially as it turned sour, did that show up in your work? Like, how did that impact, you know, other areas of your life? And you talked about compartmentalization, you know. But I'm gonna read this paragraph. It says, as the relationship deteriorated, I felt the impact on my body and in my spirit. I was constantly on edge, unsure of what new emotional landmine each day would bring. My health began to suffer. Hair, skin, sleep, energy, all affected by the weight of the mental and verbal abuse. I stayed because the thought of loss felt too overwhelming. I highlighted that about 11 times because just the weight of that truth. And I think that line resonates with me as a woman, as you know, I know that resonated. And it makes me think about, first of all, that it's a deep well for me. It's a deep well for me because I just, yeah, I mean, that's true. You know, sometimes we cling to things that we already have a sense we're not supposed to have. It's not good for us, or, you know, it's dragging us down some other way. But at least I have this. And the thought of the loss was overwhelming. Is there any more insight you can give us to that revelation that you had?
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I think it mainly, like, I didn't feel like I had no other options. I didn't feel like, you know, some women feel like I have no other options, so I'm going to stay and I'm going to put up with whatever. Mine was more that I had made this commitment to him. And when I got stuck, the way I kind of describe it, I was stuck. And when I got stuck, it was easier not to do anything, do something about it. It didn't take any energy to just stay there, to just deal with it. You know, it didn't take anything. And I think that's why I said, you know, it was just easier. The thought of leaving, the thought of doing something different was more than I could muster strength to do. And it was mainly because of being stuck, you know, in that.
Yeah.
I thought about it as like the, you know, the gerbil on the hamster wheel or whatever. And you're just going through, but you're not going anywhere, but you just, it's easy just to get on that road and do it, than to take an exit off. And so, but I will say, once, you know, he walked out and I decided that's it for me, it was a journey. It was a journey. It wasn't easy. And I think it's as easy as we make it.
Okay.
Because, and I say that because I think that in the beginning, I was truly having a pity party. I was in it all the way. Like, I had never seen myself in a space like that. Never. And at one point I recognized that, okay, you're in this pity party right now, you know, stop it. But I couldn't stop it. I wanted to, but I couldn't on my own stop it. And I think a lot of women get to that place where they want to do something different and they don't know what to do. And I'll say to anybody, you put your hands in God's hand, you put your hands in his hand, and you just let him lead you. Don't even think about what you would do or what you want to do. Just look to him, and he will lead you to the light. He led me to the light, because I was definitely feeling like I was in darkness, like I couldn't see my way through.
No, I appreciate that. And even when you talk about that moment where you're like, when he left this last time, I let him I turned around and I closed the door on it, and
Yeah.
there's a resoluteness in the way you describe that lets me know that when you put your hands in God's hand and he helped you to connect to that, it's just that decision point, and you were
Mhm.
able to be strengthened enough to do it after being so ground down emotionally that, like you're saying, you didn't have the energy. So
Yeah.
that's really good stuff.
Yeah.
Your vulnerability, you coming through this now, right? You're having a testimony, and we know that, that believers overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of the testimony. So now here you come and you bear, you didn't bear it all, but you bared enough of it, right? To put out there in the world and into community. And I wonder what the impact of that has been. So, once the book was released and people knew your story, did you feel exposed or did you feel supported? What was that like?
Mm. Yeah. So that's a good question. I actually have to say I felt and I still feel supported. The people that I've spoken with about the book, they got it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So maybe what I thought when the book first got published is that people are going to say, why is she putting all her business? Why would she want people to know that she slept with the man that she's not married to? Like why?
Mm-hmm.
But it was just the opposite. Um, People would come up to me who's read the book and they would say, I saw myself
Oh.
in one of the chapters of the book. One lady said she DM'd me on Facebook and she said, I read the book and I had been stuck for years and it helped me get unstuck.
Wow.
So I felt okay. I feel supported. I didn't feel like maybe people were going to judge,
Mm-hmm.
judgmental. Um, we were at one of our book signings and a lady came up to me and I didn't expect it. She kind of caught me off guard, but she said something to the effect that we need to get together and have a session where women can join and ask questions and share how they're feeling and feel like they're in a safe space and place to do that. And because I was caught off guard, I was like, and I should have gotten her number, but I said, well, at the end of my bio, there's my email, reach out to me. Not thinking that, well, the way I have my email set up, it could go to the junk mail if it's not somebody I usually get
Mm-hmm.
emails from. And I thought, oh my goodness, I should have gotten her number. So I was caught off guard.
Mm-hmm.
Now
Mm-hmm.
on it because I understand that this book is a tool for people. And God when He spoke to me about this book, He said, it's to help other people. And it is helping other people. So I feel supported. I do feel supported.
That's really good. And I hope that woman sees this podcast and circles back
I
so
hope
that
so.
you have another opportunity. I can imagine it took a lot for her to come to you and say what she said, you know?
Right.
And it actually the last question that I have for you actually has a lot to do with that. Um, in in the book, there was a point where you shared, you thought things were going well and you were headlong in love and, following and starting to build um, your future with Richard. And one of your sisters told you to get your head out of the clouds.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you just kind of, you heard it and you didn't hear it, and you just kind of kept pressing into the relationship because there were some great aspects of your heart was in it at this point, and you were moving along. And so my question is kind of twofold, if you allow me to say it this way. In hindsight, what do you believe outsiders or your community, what could your community have done or said that may have helped you see the light sooner, or help you to understand the true situation you were in sooner? That's part one. And the part two of that, which I'll happily repeat, if you'll need me to, is how can communities create safer spaces for people healing from anger and relational wounds?
Okay, good question. So the first part, let me say this about my sister. She's my older sister, and she often speak in prophetic, right? So when she said that to me, of course I'm like, that's not true. My head is not in the clouds. But most people, and it was amazing, and I hope to get to experience this again. But when we went out, whether it was dinner, movies, theater, sports, wherever we were, people would come up to us and they would say, how long have you been married? Or they would say, you guys look so beautiful together. You bring so much sunshine in the place. Um, and it was because we always held hands. I always had my arms around his neck. It was, people loved seeing that. People that we didn't even know would make comments. Even homeless people that we walked by would say things like that. So to have my sister say something just the opposite, I'm like, I'm not believing that. No, my head's not in the clouds. So, but in terms of, um, you know, what people can do uh, to make people feel safe, I think is to get out of the judging business. I think if people,
Yeah.
especially if they're in your community and they care
Yes.
about you, then don't judge me. And it's okay to speak firmly with me about things. It's okay. And I think people are open to that. But once you start judging, I think it draws people back in and it makes
Absolutely.
them say, I will never share again. But that first part of your question, did I answer that first part of your question?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think so. At that time, you explained really well why, your sister's intervention at that point, it didn't land, because all of the other stimuli you were getting said, no, this is great, this is sunshine and roses. So I can understand that. And I think it also makes sense in terms of how can communities create safe spaces, and for people healing. That judgment piece is huge, and I think that a lot of people are silent. Like I said, your story, while unique to you, is so universal. And when you talked about, you compartmentalized the impact of it when it was starting to go bad,
Right.
and you talked about how you suppressed it so it didn't impact your professional life. And I thought, but it impacted you. You swallowed it all, and your
Mhm,
health was
mhm.
impacted, right? And so many people with ailments that they can't trace to an origin, just so much going on around that I really would like to draw that line between something that you need to get off and out of you,
Mhm.
but not finding an outlet, or not allowing yourself to find an outlet. You swallowed it, you suppressed it, and it impacted your hair, your skin,
Mhm.
your sleep.
It
And so
did.
there's always, I think you said it, there's always a cost to pay.
Yes. And I will say, um, I talked a lot with my younger sister. She and I
Mhm.
share a lot. And she would always say, oh, he's coming back. He always does. He goes and he always comes back. And I said, this time I don't want him to come back.
There you go. Yeah.
That's when I think you alluded to, I blocked him. And I've never blocked anybody before. And I felt bad blocking him. Like, why am I blocking somebody from my phone? Just stand up to him. And but in the beginning, I wasn't strong enough that if he
Right.
had called me to not lean in again. But yeah, I blocked him on all my social media, everything. And that really helped. At the time, I didn't know it was going to help me, with the healing, but it actually did. So I would say if that's what a person needs to do, to just shut out all the noise. So, and that's what I had to do. I had to shut out
Yeah.
all the noise so that I can listen to the one God
Hey,
who could help me.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rhonda, truly, thank you so much for everything you shared. There are so many incredible nuggets that the topic points could be a million hours of conversation and several different books just by many of the concepts that you shared in this conversation. I want to pick up on something you just said, and I want to give some kind of closing threads that I discovered in this conversation. But you said your youngest sister said he'll come back. And I would love for you to share what you shared with me earlier, that in fact, Richard did come back.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love for you to share what happened, and so that we can unpack this a little bit and give I don't know if it's a warning, but give a revelation to all of the women listening about why do some men in this kind of situation circle the block?
Plot twist. Ooh, plot twist.
Yes, really a plot twist. But let me also say this, because I think it's important that we build ourselves up, that we build ourselves up with the help of God. Because I will tell you, when I was at what I saw the lowest place for me, I had to ask God to help me, to guide me, to lead me. I can't do this on my own. And, I remember my mother, when my mother was living, she used to love James Cleveland. And so we would just, go around the house and we're singing James Cleveland songs. So I tapped into part of my healing journey. I tapped into James Cleveland, Lord, help me to hold out to my change. Sometimes I was like, now, when I first started, I was really in my pity party and I was listening to songs like that. But it helped me. And I can remember the song that helped me, I think, the most. And I'm saying this because hopefully, and I know everybody have their songs, but if somebody's looking for healing and help, when I was in junior choir, when I was in youth choir at my church where I grew up, we used to sing this song, "Take Me Back, Dear Lord, to the place where I first received you, and then take me back to the place where I first believed you."
Yes, yes.
And I had to ask him to take me back to that place, because I needed to be built up again. I needed to be poured back into, because I was empty. I just I knew that without his intervention, that I would be in the same position. I'm sorry.
No
So
apologies.
sorry. But I knew I would be in the same position, taking him back. And I said that because before I answer your question, I want to say that before anybody starts to talk to an ex that, that hurt them, or a relationship that hurt really badly, build yourself back up through Christ. Build it up, whether it's with songs, reading the Bible, listening to sermon after sermon after sermon. I think I listened to so many sermons. I would be like, well, did my pastor say that? Did Pastor say that? Did this pastor say that? Because it would be like, that's what I had to do for me.
Yeah.
So I said that before I answered your question, Dr. Johnette.
That's good. That's good.
So I unblocked him after we were separated after the relationship had ended, for about 13 months after the relationship ended. I just unblocked him because I did it, I think, for two reasons. The first reason is I don't know why I did it, right? The second reason is I feel like I did it because I wanted to show myself that I'm strong again, and that I'm mentally healthy again from this. And so I unblocked him. As soon as I unblocked him, he sent me a text to call him. And I said, I'll call you tomorrow. Why can't you call me today? So that was okay. Flag number one. Red flag, right? Nothing has changed. And then the next day, I guess I didn't call soon enough. So around 8:00 that night, he called me, and he says, and I know I'm telling our business, and I'm sorry to him for telling this business, but I think this will help another woman if she encounters this. But he said he was going to marry me. He was going to come over, give me a ring. He's going to be on one knee. He is just we're going to be together. I love you. You love me, blah, blah, blah. And I gave him time. I mean, we talked on the phone for some time because I wanted to make sure that was the last time. I wanted to make sure he got everything out. And I also wanted to find out, like, why'd you really break up with me? Because when he broke up with me, all I could say is, don't do this to us, right? And so I said, I want to know why. So he told me the reason why he broke up with me is because I asked him to. I asked him to give me a chance to date other people. In fact, he said I asked him to give me a year to date other people, and that he gave it 13 months, and now he's ready to marry me. So after, we talked about it, like, are you serious? You
Wow.
Like, I'm not even that kind of a person, right? So after we got everything out, okay, and I said to him, "You sure you have it? You've said all you want to say. I've said all all I wanted to say." And then I said, "Just for the record, if you were the last man on this earth, I would not marry you." And I think he got it. I do. I think I was very, very clear to him when we talked. He did call again. And I asked him, had he read my book, because I would not have gone through what I went through if I was asking him to break up with me. So he said no, he hadn't read the book. He didn't know about a book because, once you block people on Facebook, I can't see anything he posts, and he can't see anything that I post, and he's still blocked. But so I got his address. I wrote his address down at the post office. Because he said, you should send me a copy. I sent him a copy of the book. Yes, I sent him a copy of the book. And so, I just don't get it. But he did respond back that he had sent me an email, and he said first he was sorry. No, he texted. He was sorry that he was the inspiration for me writing the book. So that's part of the ego thing. He had to put himself, he had to be part of it. But the other thing is, I think that's when he sent a text. I think it's when he sent a text. He said that because I told him he insulted my intelligence by saying that I wanted him to break up with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so he pretty much said, well, he didn't mean to insult my intelligence, but that's the way he saw it. That's why we broke up. And that's why he was coming back. He gave me the 12 months. And so women, I'm telling you, build yourself up, because I know if I was empty, I would have said, oh my God, the man that I love, the man that, I want to just spend the night, spend my life with, wants to marry me. He's going to come and he's going to, don't fall for it. I don't fall for it. That's all I can say. So stay prayed up. And so that's why I said what I said in the beginning, before I answered your question. You got, I had to spend time with Jesus. I had to make sure that he got me at least back to where I was before I met this man, and feeling that I'm worthy. I'm worthy of better. I'm worthy of someone who knows how to talk to me. Someone that I'm not asking to talk to me like you talk to your sisters, please, or your daughter. Just talk to me with respect. Yeah. So yeah, just don't fall for it. And I'm just saying, in my case, I couldn't fall for that. I could not.
Right. Rhonda, thank you for that. That's really critical to know. And as I shared with you earlier, many men circle back. They circle the block. And what I have come to understand is that some men circle the block because they know they can. And as you mentioned before, and your younger sister even said, oh, he's coming back. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Richard thought it was going to be business as usual, that you would circle back one more time. And some I've come to understand as I'm listening to various things as it relates to the male psyche, some do it for sport. And some do it out of brokenness. And Iyanla Vanzant says, the worse people act, the greater is their need for healing. And it sounds like this individual needs some healing, as we all do. We all do. Mm-hmm. And thank you also for the prescription of what to do. And I recall in my 20s being told, know thyself, get to know yourself. Well, what in the world does that mean? Right? And I've come to the conclusion, honestly, just like you were given the signs from the Holy Spirit, we don't see the signs until we're ready to see the signs. Someone can talk to you until you're blue in the face. Mm-hmm. We're not going to see it until we're ready to see it. And unfortunately, even those who are well-meaning try to help you to cut across the field. Unfortunately, but maybe fortunately, in many cases, it's not until we hit rock bottom that we make a different choice. But powerful line, you felt like you hit rock bottom, but God was the rock. And so I love that, in remembering that God is the foundation and the rock, and he will bring you back. He will, what's the phrase? Hard reset you back to what the original intent was, for you to see yourself maybe for the first time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Maybe for the first time. And so I really want women to hear that, and to also hear, as we're coming to a close, that our decisions in relationships or otherwise can show up in other areas of our lives. And it's important to recognize that. We think we're compartmentalizing, but friends, it bleeds over. Even if you don't recognize it, it bleeds over. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that you said, and all of us asking ourselves, how does this show up in other areas of my life? And so you said I was committed to the end, even though you were dying. How is that showing up? When did I first start to do that? Because I've done that. I was stuck and it was easier to do nothing. When have I done that? I'm tolerating disrespect. When and why did I first do that? And in what other areas am I doing it? I am compartmentalizing to recover, but I'm not healed. We do enough to get to the next thing, but have I also done the work to heal as a result of this experience? How we ignore God's signs because the loss would be too great, and how energy from the other team gives you signs that no, you should just keep going forward. Oh, y'all great together. The devil is a liar. How great we look, but in my spirit, it's not great.
Oh yeah.
And so, these are just great reminders. And finally, and this is going to be a controversial statement that I am about to make. I think the most dishonest people are married people, specifically married women and Christians. Sorry, I said it. Why did I say it? Because we can be judgmental, or sisters or women. We can be really judgmental. Well, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have stood for that. And it's funny, as Karen and I were talking, we can see red flags and signs in other people's story, but blind as a bat to our own stuff, right? And so I want to say to the married folk, to the women, to the Christians, don't be judgmental, because the same thing could happen to you or is happening to you, which is why you said you didn't feel judgment, you got embraced. Or I can relate to your story. Why can you relate to my story? Because you've been through it too, but you were too afraid to talk about it because you didn't want to be criticized. You wouldn't have said, oh yeah, I slept with him and I wanted to do it a different way. Nah, you're not there or in that place to be able to do that. But God raises up people through these experiences for us to be the voice for others, and therefore the chains begin to fall off. The doors to the cages that are unlocked begin to open. And so, sis, ma'am, thank you. Thank you. You have just dropped so much insight and knowledge for us, and a playbook really to go by. And so as we prepare to close, I want to invite my fellow Oasis guides to add any additional insights as we close. And for Rhonda, if you have any final insights before we close.
Okay. So just again, thank you for allowing me on your podcast. Thank you. Also, when your viewers read the book, they'll see how I encountered God towards the end when I was stuck and he had to pull me out of that. I think that's important for them to see, because God talks to us, whether we listen to him or not. Once you get in that quiet space, in that secret space with him, he will unveil things. He will disclose things to you that you couldn't have come up with if you tried, you know? And so it's just spending that time with him. And even though, he took me through a healing journey, I find myself, Psalm 91, I just have to read that over and over and over, but I still find myself leaning on him, like for the rest of my life. I'm going to lean on him and I'm going to listen to him. And he's never steered me wrong all my life. He's never told me to do something and it was to hurt me. So just for your listeners, just get that ear in tune with God. He talks about how if you dwell in me, I'll dwell in you. And that is so, so true. So that's what I would like to leave your listeners with.
Beautiful. Rhonda, thank you. Thank you so much. And everyone, please buy the Amazon bestseller book, The 7 Deadly Sins That Can Ruin a Relationship. Use the QR code to scan and purchase your copy now. So you all, thank you so much for joining us. Review this episode again, and again. Share it with anyone and everyone that you think should hear it. And please remember, you are the oasis and you carry the peace that you seek. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies.